Welcome to the Pro Voice Guy podcast. My name is Will, and I started this podcast for a simple reason. I voice and produce intros and outros for podcasts every day. I thought it would be helpful to work through the process of writing, producing, and publishing a podcast on a regular basis. That way I can offer more insight into some of the best practices of podcasting. Pro Voice Guy Podcast, the podcast about podcasts, plus a few extras about audio, social media, marketing, tech, and other stuff. I spent 15 years on the air as radio air talent, but that was a few years ago. Since then, I've been blogging, creating videos, hosting webinars, building websites, and doing a lot of different creative things, but I never really had any inspiration to podcast. Well, I finally found my inspiration, and oddly, it's about podcasting itself. I'm glad you tuned in, but even if you didn't, I'm learning a lot about the state of the industry. In the coming months, I'll be covering a number of podcasting topics and even speaking with some other podcasters about their equipment, workflow, and things they have learned along the way. This week, it's just me in the studio. Well, there might be one guest, and I'll be talking about one of the most critical components of an excellent podcast, your microphone. Let's get started. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast, well, good for you. It won't take long to get yourself or your organization up and running. Now, before you get started, you will need a few things: a microphone, software for recording and editing, and a place to host your podcast. Once you have all of that ready, there's a few best practices to help you sound great. Today, I'll cover one of the most essential things for that great podcast, your microphone. Your listeners are going to decide within the first few seconds whether or not they're going to keep listening to your podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts available. If someone isn't hooked in right away, they may just decide to start another show, which maybe you're deciding right now. Now, what is more likely to keep your attention? A show that sounds like this, or a show that sounds like this? This was recorded on my iPhone using the built-in microphone. It's not horrible, but it could sound better. Okay, so now I'm still recording on my iPhone, but I plugged in my earbuds, the headphones that come with the iPhone, and so I'm recording through the microphone that is built into those, which has a decent sound quality, but still, this one was designed for talking on the phone or maybe FaceTime. Okay, now I'm recording on the microphone that is built right into my MacBook Pro, which actually isn't a horrible microphone, especially if you're doing a FaceTime video or just recording something quick, but not super high quality. Okay, now I'm back on my regular mic. I'm talking to you on a Blue Yeti USB microphone. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. A great microphone doesn't make a great podcast. Okay, great content does. But even if you have great content, great software, a great host, your podcast won't sound great if you don't start out with a high-quality microphone. Now, fortunately, professional quality microphones are within reach for even the most cash-strapped podcasters. Today, I'm going to be focusing on USB microphones. Now, this assumes that you're using your computer to record audio. Now, there are other options. There are standalone recorders. Some people use an iPhone or an iPad or something else. Now, some podcasters who are using a computer choose not to use a USB microphone, but instead to upgrade to a professional microphone, an analog microphone, and use a digital audio converter to convert that audio into a digital signal for their computer. Now, I'm not going to go into that here today, but I will likely pick up that topic in a future podcast. Now, let's talk about some of the options. Fortunately, I have some microphones here in the studio for us to listen to. The first is the Blue Yeti. That is the microphone that I've been using for this podcast so far. Now, as someone who has had the privilege of working on some iconic microphones, including the industry standard Electro-Voice RE20 in the radio studios, I am still amazed by the sound quality of this offering from Blue. Now, some audiophile will likely leave a comment explaining why these are no good and I should throw mine out, but I use this thing day in and day out, and it always produces surprisingly good results. The Yeti is actually 3 microphones in one. With 3 onboard condenser microphone capsules, you can actually select the pickup pattern. That means you can set it to record only the sound coming from directly in front, like I'm doing right now. That's great for one voice podcasts. But it'll also record the sound coming from the front and from the back. That is fantastic if you're doing an interview or if you have two people on your podcast, you can actually share the same microphone, or it'll actually record sound from all directions, which is great for recording music or if you've got a whole bunch of people around one microphone that you want to share. Now, one of my favorite features of the Blue Yeti microphone is the built-in 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. This allows you to plug your headphones in and monitor your audio in real time, which is what I'm doing right now, without any delay often found with recording software. Sometimes you plug in a microphone and then you plug your headphones into the computer and then you hit record and you realize that the voice you're hearing in your headphones is slightly behind the voice you're hearing in your head, and that makes things really weird. You can pick one of these up for just about $130. Okay, now I'm switching over to another workhorse in my studio, the Blue Snowball. I still can't believe you can pick one of these up for about $50. I also see them at pawn shops for half that all the time. Now, it doesn't quite have the same depth and clarity as the Blue Yeti, but honestly, most people will never know the difference. This sits on my desk and I use it constantly for video conferences, YouTube videos, and other quick voiceovers. It's also super portable, so it goes in my bag when I'm out on the road. Now, it does lack a couple of things. It doesn't have those multiple pickup patterns of the Yeti. Also doesn't have that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. However, if you're on a budget and you don't need those features, this is a great mic. As I mentioned, you can pick one of these up for about $50. Okay, I switched mics yet again, and now I'm on the CAD GXL 2400 USB microphone. My son got this microphone for his YouTube channel, gaming, video chats, and whatever else he needs audio for. It's got a ton of 5-star reviews on Amazon, so I thought I would test it out. And I have to admit, for another $50 microphone, it sounds pretty amazing. It looks far more like an expensive microphone, and surprisingly, I actually think it's better than the Blue Snowball, which I really, really like. It's impressive for $50. Now, I realized as I was preparing this podcast that not everyone has a voiceover voice. I've been talking on microphones since I was a kid, and that has given me a bit more confidence and allowed me to develop my vocal range and my speaking voice. However, some of the best podcasts I listen to are hosted by people who don't have a typical announcer voice. The most important quality of your voice is that it's your voice, right? The microphone is just a tool to get the best possible reproduction and representation of the voice that you already have. So thinking about that, I realized that hearing these microphones with just my voice might not help you make a decision. So I have invited a guest into the studio. Yeah.
Can I come in?
Oh yeah, come on in. All right, well, this is Josh. Say hi, Josh.
Hi.
He's my son, and he's 12. I think he has a great voice, but it's not a typical voiceover sort of voice. So I thought it'd be fun to hear how he sounded on these 3 microphones. All right, get over here. You're going to get here at my Blue Yeti. Do you want to wear my headphones?
Yeah, sure.
All right, go ahead and put my headphones on. Don't get them too close to the mic. That'll make a horrible noise. Okay, now just get real close to the microphone there. All right, and go ahead and read that line. Hold that up a little bit, put that right up there. All right, go ahead and read that line for me.
Welcome to the Pro Voice Guy podcast, a podcast about podcasts, plus a few extras about audio, social media, marketing, and tech.
All right, well, now let's switch you over to the Blue Snowball microphone. All right, got that plugged in now. All right, here we go. Let's give it a try on the Blue Snowball. Josh, go ahead and read that again.
Welcome to the Pro Voice Guy podcast, the podcast about podcasts, plus a few extras about audio, social media, marketing, and tech.
All right, that one's hooked up and rolling. Josh, you may recognize this one. It's from your room. CAD GXL 2400 USB microphone. Go ahead and give that a read.
Welcome to the Pro Voice Guy podcast, the podcast about podcasts, plus a few extras about audio, social media, marketing, and tech.
All right, that's perfect. Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome. Bye. Forgot something.
What's up, man?
I forgot my mic.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. Those are 3 fairly inexpensive USB microphones that are really well suited for podcasting. You can see some images of these mics, read about them, find links to purchase them, and hear some more sound checks on my blog at provoiceguy.net. I'm in the midst of some studio upgrades, so in the coming weeks you'll get to hear my new AKG analog mic run through a vocal processor and a Focusrite Scarlett digital signal processor. Get a chance to hear the difference between the USB microphones and some of these professional grade XLR analog microphones. You're going to see that there is no limit to how much you can spend on a microphone. The sound keeps getting better and better, but there are also some downsides besides the cost. We're going to talk about those in a future episode as well. But you don't need to spend a ton of money to improve the sound quality of your podcast. Remember, it's the content that truly matters. But you never want sound quality to get in the way of your amazing content. Pro Voice Guy Podcast is produced by me, Will Rice, in my studio here in San Antonio, Texas. The show is produced on a Mac using Adobe Audition software. Thank you to today's guest, Joshua Rice. You can read more about the things I discussed on today's episode on my website at provoiceguy.net. If you're in the market for a podcast intro or outro or a voiceover for your YouTube channel, commercial, corporate video, or just about anything else, check out the website or find me on Upwork or Fiverr. If you don't want to miss an episode, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud, or you can just listen right on the website at provoiceguy.net. Follow me on Twitter at provoiceguy. Hey, thanks for listening.